there's currently a ludicrous suggestion that blood was found in a hire car that they hired 25 days after Madeleine was taken. And that's been put to Kate, and it's been suggested that she is in some way connected with the death of her daughter, which is clearly ridiculous.
A mudança de direção da investigação provoca o regresso dos McCann ao Reino Unido. A família, que sempre se recusou a abandonar Portugal sem ver esclarecido o desaparecimento da filha, resolve voltar para casa. As imagens do regresso da família McCann correm o mundo. Ao ver esta imagem de Gerry McCann a transportar um dos gêmeos, o irlandês Martin Smith afirma reconhecer pela postura e forma de pegar a criança o homem com quem se cruzou na noite do desaparecimento de Madeleine.
I got nightmares in my head, I fear. Thoughts build up until I can't feel. My mind fills up into a creature, and it haunts me somewhere much deeper. I got nightmares in my head, I fear.
Hello and welcome to True Crime Rocket Science, the most authentic voice in true crime. Now, it really is quite incredible if you just put the little piece of that narrative that I played you together that comes from The Truth of the Lie, the Gonzalo Amaral documentary. The McCanns are made suspects. They then leave Portugal as a result, really, of this dog evidence. As a result of the dog evidence, they leave Portugal, and then as they get off the plane, someone who was in Portugal at the time feels that he recognizes someone who's getting off the plane. He recognizes, or he thinks he recognizes, how someone is holding a child based on what he saw on the night of May 3rd. Pretty incredible. Meanwhile, no, the dogs lied. And that's really going to be the focus of this, essentially part 2 to the previous analysis, where I spoke about this gaping black hole. By the way, the gaping black hole, if you didn't know, was the ECHR verdict, which you don't see anywhere in the British coverage, the British media coverage. And then part of that, the rationale for the ECHR's finding is what the dogs did and how the dogs alerted in apartment 5A. Now, I guess you could ask the question, do judges understand this sort of evidence better than journalists? Yes or no? At the same time, I think it's a valid question to ask, do I, who understands this kind of evidence very well? And I think it's very important to go into this and go into how the McCanns went on to study and deal with the dog evidence. And that's what we're going to do in this analysis. Before we get to that, if you haven't subscribed to the channel, please do. By the way, my analytics show that less than, well, put it this way, about 2/3 of you are watching aren't subscribed. Also, some of you complain saying, why are your videos so short? Well, it's based on your attention spans, actually. According to the analytics of the last video, people stopped watching at before the 8-minute mark. So if you want longer videos, then you need to watch for longer. If you're finding this analysis worthwhile, new, stimulating, you're getting something out of it, please hit the like button. You can also hit the thanks button. If you've never done that before, please do. Bear in mind, I don't really do lives, but having said that, I'm going to be doing a live later today, crime news update, where we'll be talking about the Delphi case. So look out for that. Right, and let's get started. So we are still dealing with this article from the Independent. It is titled, Gerry McCann broke the secrecy code and briefed me on what had really happened that night. And this is the part dealing with the dog evidence. Oh, ha, 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 the dog evidence is ridiculous. And this reporter who says he's not a shill for the McCanns basically repeats the exact same thing that Gerry said in a news interview. The dogs lied.
How can you explain the coincidence of the scent of the cadaver felt by British and not Portuguese dogs?
Sandra, maybe you should be asking the judiciary because they've examined all this.
But don't you? So you don't have any explanation for that?
Ask the dogs, Sandra.
Ask the dogs, no, Gerry. Now I think that I feel free to ask you.
Hold on, what did Kate say over there?
Sandra, maybe you
In
should
your
be asking the
apartment.
judiciary because they've examined all this.
But don't you
Well, in terms of the judiciary and the highest court, in terms of that process, the European Court of Human Rights, what did they decide in terms of the dog evidence? Well, here it is, and we dealt with that in a previous episode. Now, in this article, he writes regarding the dogs, quote, as the press seized on PJ leaks of reported inconsistencies in their accounts, the finding of the dogs, the DNA, etc., I was often a lone exception to the general assumption that the McCanns were guilty, a phenomenon that quickly spread from Portugal to the UK. I remember arguing with an editor about their supposed role in Madeleine's death. But what about the dogs, David? The dogs don't lie. But they did lie. And it does seem that today that is what most of the people in the British media do seriously think. In September 2007, the same month the McCanns were made arguidos, official suspects by the Portuguese police, an event that was closely tied to the cadaver dog and blood dog alerts and evidence. Gerry made it his mission to disprove the accuracy of the dog evidence. And this is a fascinating story, and we're going to follow it right now. And to do that, he chose the Zapata case. And you can go and Google it. You can research it on your own. I do encourage you to do it. But true to form, the British media covered how this case proved how dog alerts were unreliable. And that's essentially why Gerry McCann himself was investigating it. He was using it as legal ammunition to show the evidence from dogs aren't always used. And he has a criminal case, a murder case, where the evidence was thrown out. And have a look at some of these headlines. McCann's will use US evidence to challenge scent of death claims. So they were definitely taking it seriously. It was a serious accusation and requiring serious, sensible efforts to refute these claims. Another headline, Madeleine, McCann's consult American lawyers over cadaver dog evidence. Here's an excerpt. They want to highlight the judge's dismissal of cadaver dog evidence in the high-profile Eugene Zapata murder trial in Madison, Wisconsin. The couple's lawyers have already contacted Zapata's defense team, who are now sending their large file on the matter to Britain. Unfortunately for the McCanns, a few years after the judge in the Zapata case threw out the cadaver dog evidence, the suspect, confessed, thereby confirming the evidence. Thus, Gerry's prime example of inaccurate dog data blew up in his face. Typically, the feckless British media never bring this up either, and certainly in this article it's not brought up. The amazing thing with the Zapata case was in how many places the dogs alerted for human remains. I think it was in a basement, it was in a storage container. In fact, there were so many places people started to think, what is going on with these dogs? That they can't be alerting all over the place. Until Zapata confessed to moving the remains to progressively safer spots over a period of time, it seemed like the dogs were off track in this particular case, and yet they weren't. Well, where have you seen a similar sense of contempt for this idea of human remains being moved?
So there's currently a ludicrous suggestion that blood was found in a hire car that they hired 25 days after Madeleine was taken. And that's been put to Kate, and it's been suggested that she is in some way connected with the death of her daughter, which is clearly ridiculous.
But this clearly ridiculous claim was one that certainly the European Court of Human Rights also took seriously. And let's face it, validated. So no, those dogs, the dogs in the Zapata case, Gerry McCann's pick of the bunch case for proving that dogs are unreliable and that dogs lie, instead proved the opposite. And so look at these headlines. Man says he would have admitted killing wife after his death. And you can go and read up on the Zapata case. I do encourage you to do so. But the irony is it wasn't only the McCanns who didn't put much stock in the dogs. Amaral didn't either. In the Netflix docuseries, he said, there are never cases where the dogs solve the investigation or the case. He says, I've always been skeptical about using dogs. And the irony is this might be a case where the dogs do provide seminal very important evidence. It really doesn't help that the chief detective, doesn't seem to place much stock in it either. Unlike Amaral, I've seen case after case after case, Patrick Frazee, Lacey Peterson, Kaylee Anthony, Suzanne Morphew, and more recently, Jay Slater, where you see just how much better dogs are at finding dead bodies than people. I'm not going to take it further than that, but I am interested to hear what you think of this sort of evidence. Have you seen this kind of evidence in other cases? What do you think about it? Are these trained dog alerts vital and valuable, or are they very unreliable? Let's hear what you guys think about it. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you guys next time.